If you end up with a hole in your wall at home, I'm going to show you now a nice easy fix that requires no timber that every DIYer should know to be able to repair the wall or ceiling. Okay, so we made a recent video showing you how to fix a hole in a stud wall. Now I'm going to show you another way of doing it. In the last video we used a bit of timber, but I'm going to suppose now for a change that you've got no timber on you and you need to do it a different way. So I'm going to show you how to fix this just using plasterboard. There's two ways we could do it. I can't decide which way to show you. In fact, I'll show you both ways. We're going to make another little hole just for demonstrative purposes. So let's just check no one's watching. We'll do another one just here. Right. So now we've got another hole here. I'll show you the two different ways of fixing these up. Okay, so for the first one, first thing we need to do with this is clear out all of the off-cut bits of board, that's the loose bits. Behind the plasterboard for this has to be nice and clean with no bits hanging down. Okay, that's it now. Inside there's none of this hanging. Then, take your measurements. So, we need to make sure that this fits through the hole. You want it a lot wider, but it's going to be able to fit in. So, that is perfect. It fits in the gap. The next thing you want to do is make two small holes in the plasterboard, about 1 inch apart. Now, you can use a drill for this, but I didn't have one to hand. Then, get some scrim and thread it through the holes. String will work for this, but scrim's stronger. Thread it through from the back so that the tails are on the white side. Okay. So now we've got a little handle to pull on. Get yourself some drywall adhesive. This stuff is designed to stick to plasterboards. What we have to do is just put adhesive around the perimeter of this board. The key here is to make the adhesive proud. You want it to stand up off the plasterboard like high blobs. Now, the tricky bit is getting that in there without getting covered in adhesive, so just take your time, hold on to it by the middle there, and you won't be too far off getting covered in it. Now, there's a few different brands of drywall adhesive that you can use, and they'll all work fine. Just be aware that this brand I'm using actually call it bonding compound, which you don't want to get confused with bonding coat, which is a completely different type of plaster. Get it in position. Don't pull too hard, because you'll actually rip the plasterboard out. And there you go. You want to bring the plasterboard patch as tight as you can to the existing wall. This helps create a bit of suction in the plaster and stops the patch sliding down when you let go. A little wiggle as you're pulling helps you achieve that without ripping the plasterboard patch to bits. Now, when you get to this point, you've got two options. With the drywall adhesive, you can just completely fill that flush and just fill it up with drywall adhesive. That's one way of doing it. Or the other way of doing it, which I'm going to do now, is to now insert another bit of plasterboard over the top. Now, the reason I'm going to do it that way is because if I fill a drywall adhesive, it's going to take a lot longer for this to dry out before these guys can paint over the work. So once we've skimmed it, because it's on so thick, it'll take a while to dry. So I'm going to use some plasterboard in there instead, and that way the drying times will be less before they can decorate it. Hold on to your string or your scrim so it doesn't move. Just apply little bits of adhesive to the back of these pieces of plasterboard. Now again, as I said, rather than putting this top layer of plasterboard on, we could have just filled this void with adhesive, but it would have took a long time to dry out. Now, the piece of plasterboard I'm putting in, we could have also just cut little holes with that and done it in one piece. But I'm trying to show you that there's lots of different ways of doing it, and I believe that this way would be the easiest for the DIYer to do. Okay, so once this is set, we'll cut this scrim up here, we'll scrim it all up properly, we'll seal the area, and then we'll skim it. But we've got to let this set first. Another way you could do it is you could get some filler, some easy fill, go over the patch if you're a DIYer, get it as flat as you can, let it set, and then you could sand it down smooth. I'm a plasterer, so I don't bother with filler, we'll just do it with plaster. It'll be faster and neater for me to do. Okay, so for this type of patch, you need plasterboard, you need drywall adhesive, and you need scrim. You could use string for that bit, but ultimately you still need to scrim around the edges. Now for this one, I'm going to show you the way of doing it with just plasterboard and adhesive. You don't need scrim, you don't need wood, and you don't need screws. So this next type of repair is really straightforward and simple. You just need a knife and something to smooth the adhesive out with. So we've sort of squared the hole off. Makes it easier for the next part if it's a sort of a squarish shape, you know. Don't get your set square on it, it's just got to be close enough. Now, you want to cut a piece of plasterboard about 1.5 inches bigger, both ways, like so. Now, before you do this bit, you've got to put the sealer on first. This is my own brand of SBR that I make. It's from Plasterers Blend. We do a pink version, but clear is ideal for patching. You can get it at pinksbr.co.uk. Okay, so we'll let the SBR dry in a little bit. Now, what you're going to do is mark the back of the plasterboard for this. And you want to make it just ever so slightly smaller than the size of the hole. So, for instance, there's the hole there. We're going to go in a little bit, there, in a little bit, there. And what you're going to do is take those lines right through, like that. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. If you're a bit skew, if your hands are a bit shaky, maybe you've had too many beers the night before, then use a ruler or something. Same with the side ones. Slightly smaller, and just follow those through as well. Now, here's the clever bit, right? Take your time doing this, don't wreck it. What you're going to do is just snap the board like so, and you're going to peel it off like that. Make sure you don't let the paper peel off this piece. Now, just try to emphasise, make sure it fits, no problem. Right, this bit's important. Pay attention now, because a lot of people think that a California patch is weak, but it's not. It's very strong. Make sure you put plenty of adhesive inside the hole. That's going to join the new piece of plasterboard to the old wall, so that bit's the most important bit. Smearing it on the face like you can see me doing now is good. This is what's going to get the paper flattened down and make it so we don't need scrim, but it's the adhesive inside the hole that works the magic, so make sure you get plenty in there. Board. Now, don't push in the middle. Just push around the sides, the paper, like so. You need your trowel for this bit. Now, don't let the trowel push on the middle of this. You can only push if it's spanning across it, okay? So you don't want to push that through. Now, with whatever method you've chose, once you've reached this section, once you're at this point, you've done quite well. And you've got options now. There's 2 ways you can go with it. You can either let this set, come back with some filler, fill over the whole area and then rub it down, or you can choose option B, which I'm going to go with, and seal the area, and I'm going to plaster it with real plaster. I prefer this method because I think it's a nicer job and there's no waiting round to sand it down. It'll all be done quite quick. Now that said, I'm going to show you a way that you can skim it really fast using an accelerator, but a good method for a DIYer. We're going to use a different tool that's going to make skimming very easy, and you'll see that shortly. Okay, that's it for now. I'm going to come back once these have set later on. I'm going to seal it and skim them. So we were here at 6 o'clock this morning when it was quiet. We got the little patches ready. Now it's 7 o'clock in the evening. It's quieting down in the kitchen, so we can come back and do the patching up. Okay. All set nice and solid. So what we're going to do now is seal these, and then I'm going to show you a completely different way of skimming them, which will be a lot easier for beginners to do. And also, I'm going to show you how fast it can be done, because there's different ways of doing it. People might say, oh, you could do it with filler, and it'll be done with an hour. Well, I'm going to show you, I've put my watch on so I can show you how long this actually takes. I'll show you a completely different way of skimming. Really simple, really fast. Okay, first thing we need to do is trim off this. This is all, we just use this to hold it in place. This can now go, so that's that out of the way. Now, remember, this one doesn't need scrim, only this one. So we're going to scrim it up first before we put the sealer on, because once the sealer's gone on, this scrim will slide around. So this going first. Wherever a plasterboard meets another plasterboard, the joint needs covering with either paper or scrim. Best sealer in the world. One of the benefits of SBR over PVA is that it dries really fast. It takes about 10 minutes to dry, and it's dry, that's it. As soon as it goes tacky, we're good to go. Using a sponge, so anyone can do this. This is good for beginners and half time. So look at the time now. It's 25 to 9 in the evening. Watch how long this takes. 25 to 9, watch this. If you're a beginner, don't do this bit. Don't use accelerator. This is just for the guys that do a lot of patching, or that maybe think that using filler is faster. You'll see how quick this goes. This is going to set fast. Now I know what you're thinking, that is not the nicest looking mix of plaster, but the thing is, it's setting that fast. If you start messing around with it now, adding a bit of water and mixing it again, it'll just set in the bucket before it's on the wall. So the idea here is get it mixed up as quick as you can and just start getting it on, because this will be set in no time. Now I can feel the stuff picking up on my handboard, so I've given it 2 coats straight away. I haven't waited in between, it's just had one layer followed by another layer. Now the key here is not to mess around and wait about. I'm going to put my tools down now and start smoothing this out instantly. Now usually I'll just flick a little bit of water, but if you're a beginner you'll find it easier to use the sponge. This is going to do 2 things. It's going to knock down any high spots, any lines that you've got, and it also brings fat up in the plaster. Now you can plaster and spread the fat out a little bit more from the first coat. So I'm going to now take this to the sides and the edges, as it's easier to work to an edge than what it is to blend in. Now using a sponge isn't my preferred method. In fact, I never really use one, but it's good to demonstrate different ways that you can do jobs. The principle behind it is the plaster is setting really quick. Now it's going to be firm towards the back because I haven't touched it, but I've rubbed over the front of it with the sponge, which brings the fat up. So basically what that's doing is the front of the plaster is still workable, whereas the back of the plaster has already started to set and go off. The sponge is okay to use in the early stages of plastering. You don't want to be using it in the later stages, and the reason because is the fat that comes off the plaster early on has still got plenty of setting power, whereas further down the line any fat that you bring up starts to become weaker and weaker and more diluted of actual plaster. So what happens is, as you're working that fat in, it doesn't set and it just makes the wall slightly dusty and quite weak on the surface. So use your sponge early on, the first trowel or the second trowel, but not anymore after that. So I'll use it one more time and then that will be it for the sponge now. Notice as well that I'm keeping my flat brush close by. The joins where you blend it in always need wetting, and that's to help it get a perfect feather into the old wall. You could do it with the sponge, but the sponge can be quite messy sometimes and you end up with lots of drips. So here you go, this is the second go over now with the sponge. So we sponged it before we flattened in, and now we've just sponged it before we give it the first trowel. And that will be it, the sponge won't come out again. This is setting that fast, that you just don't stop troweling, you just keep going until it's polished. Look, it's going dark already in places. It'll literally be a minute or 2 and it'll be finished. Now, you always get people concerned that the plaster around the edges where it's blended in is going to flake off when they go over it with the roller when they're painting. The reason that does that is because someone hasn't sealed out far enough. As long as the area where you've sealed is bigger than the area where you've plastered, there's no reason for the plaster to flake off when the decorator comes in to paint it. Now, there's not much more that you need to see from this. Now, I just went over it twice more before the end of the video. Exactly the same as what I've just done there, but 2 more times. Okay, that is completely finished, like a piece of glass. Seamless blend, perfectly feathered in. Look at the time. 10 to 9. That's the fastest patch you've ever seen. That's finished. That's gone off. The accelerator's set it. So we're going to clean up, and that's us done. Now, the bit you're about to see next, you're never allowed to tell my missus. If she finds out that I know how to use a mop, that's it. I've cracked on for years. I don't know how to mop or hoover. And seeing as out as a leisure centre, they let us use the bath afterwards. Check out kirkjohnstone.co.uk. The link's in the description.